So we had a really good response from last week.
Oh, it was fantastic. It was really good for our first time, the first time we'd actually ever done that. So it was really lovely to get that response and people asking questions, and
it was
lots of views. So that's brilliant. Really, really
lots of shares, and I think that's fantastic. I'm just trying to see if I can find us here on my phone so I can see if there's anyone watching and what kind of comments, and I can't see it, so bear with me. So we've got a few things that we'd like to talk about.
We have indeed. Okay, well, while you're trying to get it up there, I'll go through what we're going to talk about today. So first of all, thinking about mental imagery in general, and why is it so important. And last week we talked about the importance of grounding, of stilling the mind and the body connection, and getting rid of that stress, because obviously stress has a terrible effect on all learning, but particularly on the mental imagery that we're holding in our mind's eye. So that'll be the first thing, a bit of a recap from last week and going into more detail. And then thinking about, well, why is mental imagery really important for learning how to spell? And we're actually going to ask you to join in and a little experiment with us about how you spell. And don't worry, everything will be private and secret, so no embarrassment there. And so why do we need these visual skills? What's really important about learning how to visualize words in the mind's eye? And I think then we'll really be open for questions.
Absolutely.
How are we getting on?
Yeah, we're good. We're ready to go. I can. There's always a little bit of a delay between what we're doing on Zoom and then broadcasting to Facebook. So there's just a little bit of a delay, but we'll see now who's there as we go through. But yeah, so if anyone wants to post a question or to say hi, then that's perfect. They can do that, and I can see that now. So I'll be looking.
Oh, you can see that. They're all set.
If you're wondering why I'm looking away every few minutes just to see. But yeah, excellent. Absolutely.
So that's what we're just going to chat, aren't we, Sara? Chat about it and answer any questions that come up, and hopefully people will get something from our chat.
Absolutely. So mental imagery. One of the questions last week was from Lucy, who was asking, how do we actually get going? You know, she was looking for a metaphor or a way to explain this to a child for the first time. What do you generally do?
Well, I generally, if people are coming to see me privately, I ask the parent to ask the child to bring something that they really like, maybe something that they're proud of, that they feel that they've achieved. Sadly, some children actually haven't got very much that they really feel proud about at the moment, you know, because they've struggled so much. Learning has been such a challenge. But often there's something, if it's a sport or a hobby. I remember one child loved baking, brought me delicious cake, which was great. But if they can't bring me something, then it's just talking about, what are you interested in? What do you really enjoy doing? And it might be a favorite toy. It might be a favorite food, for example, or a football team, any kind of sports team, dancing, gymnastics, any activity that they really like and feel engaged with. And then I just have a chat and we just talk about, oh, what did you do? And then great thing is, you notice their eyes go up sometimes. I'll just take my glasses off. And if you're thinking about, so if Sara was just sort of, I'm now going to think about what we're going to eat tonight, and I'm visualizing. And when you start to visualize, then your eyes go up. And when you're talking to somebody and they're explaining something that they enjoy doing, their eyes will start to go up as they visualize either the thing or themselves doing it. And that's when you know that they're forming images in their mind's eye.
I think it's worth talking about excuse me, eye patterns here, actually. I think it's a really I think it's so important because it's something that it's not really outside of the NLP world, other than negotiators in the police or
that's true.
Areas like that. Where people's eyes go and move to is actually a huge source of information, isn't it? When as coaches,
it really is.
People, it really tells an awful lot. So the way I often describe it is that the brain has 3 drawers. there's a little bit more complexity to it. But if we just have it very simply say, okay, there's one drawer which is kind of from the eyes up, there's a middle drawer which is where the ears are, and then really sort of from the mouth down is then the third drawer. And exactly that, watching people, I mean, my eyes move all over the place. So even when I've noticed when I'm talking to people, even on the video, and people are talking, I'm looking at them. But when I'm thinking about something or I'm talking, I can see my eyes are all over the place.
You can see it, can't you? Especially now that we're doing so much on Zoom with the camera, and you notice it so much more on TV. I've been watching people being interviewed, and they think, and their eyes are going up there and all over the place. Fascinating.
Absolutely. So the top drawer, which is the one that we're the most interested in and to really notice, and this is so important. This is all of the course. So we do teach people how to observe eye patterns. Is that when you notice people are looking up, and it doesn't matter whether it's left or right, we're not going to get into that at this level, but essentially what they're seeing are pictures inside their heads, so their mind's eye, that mental imagery, that's where you go. And if people are not convinced about this, one of the questions I often ask, particularly with if it's the adults, I'll just say, remember the first car that you drove, what color was it? And
I could just feel my eyes picking up there to this old Ford Anglia. That's right. And I could feel it happening. I was trying to stop it happening, but I couldn't.
You actually can't, because what the eye patterns are doing is help. Although the image is not outside, by moving the eyes up, what it does is it helps the brain to access that type of information. And so for me, it was a beaten up red Golf that was third or fourth hand in my family, and I do remember it was quite an exciting car because it used to stall going round roundabouts, and it was a bit like being on a fairground ride, going, like, are we going to stall? Go around. So I can see it, and it was bright red. It was like a fire engine red, and so you and I, obviously, we both look up to the left for that. Some people might look up to the right. So that doesn't really matter at this point, which way you go. But a lot of children, when they're struggling to spell, you will notice that their eyes don't go up, so they're not actually seeing things. Right. So Des is saying hello. Oh, thanks, Des. Hi.
Oh, hello, Des. Thank you for joining us.
Join us again. So that's the top drawer. So the top drawer is mental imagery, either things that you have seen before or things that you can imagine seeing. So when we think of something and we haven't seen it before, but maybe it's a combination of things that we've seen before, we're creating a new combination, something brand new. We'll look up as well, but the other direction. And of course our ears are here. So the middle drawer is all about how to think, accessing sounds. And again, people will go, no, that's ridiculous. And then I'll watch them and they'll be talking about what someone said to them, and you'll see their eyes go to the side. And this is really pertinent in terms of phonics in particular, which really relies on just predominantly the sounds of the words. And so when someone's trying to spell and they're not very successful at spelling, you'll often see their eyes go side to side, won't you?
Yes.
Because what they're looking for is the sounds of the words rather than actually what does it look like. It's either that one or then the bottom drawer looking down, which is our emotions and our self-talk. And again, that is so important to know, because where is most of the work being done at school? Where are children looking most of the time?
Absolutely, it's down there, isn't it? And often, even for reading, teachers will say, put the book down flat on the desk, so that they're looking down all the time. And so therefore all that negative self-talk, like, I can't do this, this is so hard, this is so difficult and so challenging. And what we used to do is get things up and try and get the reading book up, and if they could use sort of writing boards, so that you're actually accessing the visual processing rather than being right down here.
And a really good way of testing this in terms of matching the eye patterns with the location of the book. So this is not obviously this is just it's not a reading book, it's just a sketchbook, but is that what we get people to do, and people can do this at home either now or after watching this. Well, after is probably better because it'll be a bit distracting otherwise. Is to start off reading, imagine this is flat on the table, is to actually have a book either flat on the table or flat on your knee, on your lap, and just read a few lines of the book, with it flat and just notice, well, what does that feel like? And I always find it fascinating because whenever I say to adults, if they are avid readers and they like to read, you know, that's actually too heavy. How do you hold your book, you know, when you're reading for pleasure? And inevitably it's like this. We hold the book up at about a 45-degree angle, and we tend to be looking straight at it, rather than, and I go, well, where do you put your book for work? And generally it's flat. I'm like, well, why do we have this two very distinctly different angles for the book? And because this is generally what we're told at school. Also, if the book's very heavy, or it's, you know, it's pieces of paper, you know, like A4 sheets that you're reading or things like that, it's much harder to have that, you know, kind of held up. But if people just did this as a quick exercise, so you have your book flat and you read a couple of lines of the book and you notice, how does that feel? Your head's down. It's obviously not great for the neck, you know, in terms of posture and everything else. So normally it's quite uncomfortable to stay like that for too long. And then to simply hold the book up at the 45-degree angle, and then just notice, well, how does that feel? And generally it feels better, because straight away your posture is better, you're not got your head bent. And then as a final one, because this sometimes suits people better, is actually to hold it up so you're looking up slightly. And a lot of people read in bed, they have their pile of books by their bed, and often they're lying down and the book is actually at that angle, so they're actually looking up. And people don't realize that it's an unconscious habit that we do. So in order to improve, you know, actually helping the brain to use the right part of the brain for spelling and reading, the angle of the book is actually, you know, really, really important. And also when you're learning something, you have to have it at the right angle as well.
That's absolutely right. So going back to the mental imagery, you begin to notice the eyes going up, don't you, when people are visualizing, or when a child is visualizing their pet or their favorite toy or football, as we said. And then once you see them, you say, oh, could you see that? You know, what was happening? Did you have a picture inside your head about your teddy bear or your toy car or train, whatever? And then the person will say, oh, yes. So well, tell me about the picture. And then you just start talking about the picture that they've created in their mind. And you're, oh, right, okay. So, and then you can start just really informally unpicking the kind of image that's in them. I usually sort of give them a little hint beforehand that, you know, I'm going to ask questions that teachers don't normally ask. So as a parent, you might want to say, you know, I've never really asked you this sort of question before, but, you know, is it okay if I ask you about, you know, the pictures that you've got inside your head? And then usually
most children are amazed at being asked this question, because
they love it.
And they're delighted.
Oh, it's great fun. Oh, right. Because then you can start thinking, well, when you said cat, I saw, and then you can start sharing each other's images and just talking about the pictures that you create. You can talk about, well, what did we do last weekend? Do you remember where we went? And then, well, what I remember is this, that, or the other. And you can start really just talking about it. And then you narrow down and down and down to, say, one object. And often we use something like a cat or a dog, don't we? That's easy to remember. But sometimes it can be something, if people really enjoy, I don't know, playing hockey, they can picture a hockey stick, or just something that they like.
Yeah. Or as you said, maybe if they follow soccer, you know, who's their football team.
Yes.
So there's just a quick question here from Des.
Oh, great.
Just asking about the 45-degree angle and about helping people to improve their sketching or their drawing. And actually, when you think about it, most of the drafting tables, drafting tables are never flat. They're always up at an angle. If you think about when people are painting, it's on an easel.
Artist easel, always up there like that.
It's absolutely applies to create. And in fact, I would think it's just as important, if not more important, for creativity. Because you're not going down into your emotions and that very uncomfortable posture as well. So yeah, it definitely does apply to drawing and sketching and painting as well.
And just as a little aside, you know, we were talking about the emotional impact of lockdown. So we're going off on a tangent. We do this when we chat.
We do. Yeah.
That when you've got a child who is very upset, you know, and not depressed, but just really unhappy, then just getting them to picture something, getting them to raise their eyes and, oh, look at that, the bird up there or the tree or something, just get them out of that emotional state just by raising their heads, looking up, can have a kind of happiness making.
Yeah, it actually does. It lifts everybody, because
yes.
I often, when I'm teaching a group, I'll say, okay, right, everyone, do a really good impression of someone who's feeling really depressed. Not saying anything. I just want you to just, with your body, I want you to just, what would be the posture? And everybody does exactly the same thing. Slumped, slouched over and looking down.
Very difficult to feel happy like that, isn't it?
It's very difficult to feel happy when we're actually slumped over. We're also not helping our lungs, we're not helping our posture in terms of our breathing and everything moving. And there's a reason for that, and exactly that. It's our body and our, we're all connected. Everything is connected. It's not just what's happening in here. Our entire system, mind, body, and emotions are all completely connected. So our posture does have a massive impact on our emotional state, and they know this from studies. I know Harvard did a study on it was on kind of like power pose, or like power positions.
Oh yeah, yes.
What's quite interesting, and kids absolutely love this one, which is if you do the Wonder Woman pose, and if you stand and you do the Wonder Woman pose, actually it releases testosterone, whether you're male or female.
Oh right, I'm to try that.
So it makes you feel more powerful. It makes you feel, and when you have that feeling, you can't feel depressed because you feel really, really powerful. So even getting kids to go, right, we're going to be in our super pose today. We're going to be in our superhero, pose before we do any work or anything else. Yeah. Or just if they are feeling a bit down, all of these things make a huge difference. And often the emotional state and really how people are emotionally feeling or physically feeling is not taken into account, when they're struggling to learn. And for us, it absolutely is the cornerstone of everything we do. Without that, really, we're it's an uphill battle.
Absolutely, and that kind of brings us into the grounding, because when you started talking about the mental imagery, and and it's important to make it fun, so things that they really enjoy doing, and make it really, really good fun. They might remember a movie or something they've seen on TV. And then you can start honing in. And of course, this is on the course. How do you actually get the image to be the way that we want it? So if we're now thinking about a dog, for example, how do you get that dog to be still and clear and
one dog,
the right size? Only one dog, not every single dog that you've ever seen in your life. How do we get that? And obviously we can't go into that in detail here, but that's what we do. But to help it get to be the sort of stable, clear image that we want, grounding is important. And if you remember last week, we talked about how you just send your attention down from your head, relax down through your body, being aware of inside. You can get down into your feet, really feel your feet against the ground. If you can go outside in bare feet, even better. And then standing there, you just imagine that you're sending roots down from the soles of your feet, deep and wide, so you really root yourself into the ground, so to speak. And then with breathing, you can breathe up, breathe the energy in, and then just let go of the energies and the thoughts and the feelings that you don't want down into the ground. So again, that's on the course.
Absolutely. And I think especially now, I mean, we are hearing of more and more children who obviously adults. I mean, I'm seeing articles everywhere now about the stress levels that adults are experiencing during lockdown, and really even if they're working or they're not working, it doesn't matter. Everybody's under so much pressure, and children are unfortunately really also suffering in huge numbers in terms of their mental health and the stress and the fear that they're experiencing. So and this is so important that the parents do this before they do help their children, isn't it? We know, I mean, I often anyone who's watching who has come to me and brought their child will know that at some point I will have probably said to them, I'd like to work with you too. Not necessarily on spelling or learning difficulties, but just on how to self-regulate, how to be in a better emotional state. Because if the parent's not, then it really is virtually impossible actually for a child to be nice and calm and into that lovely learning state
Absolutely.
that we encourage so much.
For a parent, it's heartbreaking. I mean, I've met so many parents, in my office, and just at their wits' end, because you want so much for your child, don't you? And you, above all, you want them to be happy. But part of that being happy is, doing well at school and having friends and getting on and, just succeeding. You don't want them to be, genius. You just want them to keep up and do well. And of course, when you see your child not coping, and you think,
oh, it's heartbreaking.
Why can't you, particularly if you haven't got those difficulties yourself, you don't know what's going on. If you, it's challenging because you just don't understand. Well, why can't you get it? It's there. It's impossible.
Can't you see it?
Can't you see it? You're just being lazy. Just focus. Concentrate a bit more. Do this. That's all that, and then the tension builds up in the parent. But if you have gone through the challenges yourself, then you've got a different thing. You've got the perspective. The pain. And so it takes you back to being at school and struggling and having that kind of challenge. So, for a parent, you've got so many issues and struggles of your own, when you're trying to help your child who's struggling. So it's really important for adults, as you say, to find that moment.
I read a very interesting article, and I'm sure a lot of parents who are watching this will relate to this, which is that, I read it was funny, but it was also really tragic. It was one of those things you just go, oh my God, this is ridiculous, which was that a parent was writing about her experience, homeschooling. And, she said actually what was sending her over the edge more than anything else was a WhatsApp group of other parents. And it was almost like a competition as to whose child was doing the most amount of work. And this morning we've had yoga and we've had exercise with whoever, and then we've done an hour of a science project, and then we've done this and this woman was just looking going, she couldn't even get her child to just do 10 minutes to just sit down and focus. And so then we have this horrible guilty feeling that we're not doing enough. And I know as a mum, hands up, absolutely. I'm not perfect when it comes to there is no perfect. I think that is really, really important to mention this, that it's not about a comparison with anybody else. But I think now we've got this added pressure of, we don't even know where our kids, are in terms of everybody else. We're just looking at going, where do we start? And absolutely, before, we really encourage you as parents, before you sit down with your children, is to breathe.
If you only do the breathing without the roots, just getting that balanced breathing. Sometimes people say just make it equal. So in to a count of 3 and out to a count of 3, for example, and then you can start extending it to in for a count of 4 and out for a count of 4. Some people like to do, say, in for 3 and out for longer. If you can, do twice, in for 3 and out for 6. There are lots of breathing.
You fall asleep.
Oh, right, yeah, that's true. There are lots of breathing exercises on the internet, how to sort of calm anxiety and calm yourself down. So, but the easiest one is the balanced breathing, just in for 3, out for 3. And that just sends a message to your body that, okay, I'm calm. I don't need to have my fight and flight and, my anxiety thing. So you're just really calming down the whole system. You change the different neurochemicals in the body. You could just calm it all down, and that's so important for parents, and to get rid of those thoughts of, am I better than these?
Absolutely. And then throughout, even
and
when
those thoughts
when they're up and down, and my younger son, there's a couch over there, he's inevitably doing headstands on it. When he's and asking me to, and he's doing his mental maths while he's upside down, and I just thought that's just obviously the way he does it. There's no, and you just have to remind yourself to just breathe.
Just imagine those roots going down,
and to just
send it down to the ground
throughout, because without that, it's very, very hard then, for children to really be in a really calm state. As well. So yeah, absolutely, that whole thing. And just kind of going back to mental imagery, because it is being in a optimal learning state and being able to really recognize mental imagery, understand it, be able to develop it, be able to control it, is again cornerstone of all of good academic learning, actually.
It is, absolutely.
And sometimes, you know, you might ask somebody to think of something and they can't. What do you do then? When people are just insisting they can't see things.
Insisting they can't see. Okay.
So I've had a few of those.
We've had a few of those. We've had a few of those. Absolutely. Well, sometimes I remember I did have one. No, I'll start with the easier one and then move. So I might just sort of pick up a pen and just say, okay, we'll just have a look at that. Let's see that one. And then I'll just hide it away and say, what color was the pen I just held up? And inevitably they will say orange. And then we say, well, how did you know that? And they say, well, I just know.
Yeah.
I just know it was orange. Now, there are some people who have the aphantasia, which they actually do not see, or they don't, let me rephrase that, they're not conscious of seeing images in the mind's eye.
Very, very small percentage of people.
A very small percentage of people, but there is a spectrum from the people who are, you know, absolutely, you know, aphantasia up to, you know, multiple screens, multiple images, you know, just such visual overwhelm inside the mind's eye that they're going, yeah, we're on a spectrum here. And so that's one of the things that I would do, use a colorful object. One child I had needed to hold something, and I had really pretty stones on there, and he was fiddling with the stone. I said, so hold the stone and close your eyes, and, you know, by feeling it he could get a picture in his mind's eye. Often it's through favorite TV characters, because they do see them, or even Minecraft. I've used Minecraft a lot because
now,
because you ask them to describe some of the things that happen on their video games, and they can really do that. And so you can, and I think as long as you know that they're visualizing, then you can start that work. Other people who really stubbornly say they're not visualizing, then sometimes I just say, well, just imagine if you could.
Yeah.
Just think that you could. Just imagine. I'm not bothered about the image at all. Just what if you could? And then we carry on with the session, and then they go, oh, okay, and suddenly it happens.
And
so you just take the stress away.
And of course, the more you see the eyes move up,
you know that they are seeing. And so sometimes
it will be unconscious. The eyes moving will be unconscious.
Yeah, and sometimes visualizing is more unconscious than conscious. So as long as you see those eyes moving, you know that you can work with something, and then you can, as people get more practiced with it. I mean, a note of caution. I mean, I have worked with some highly traumatized children in the past, and you have got to have a little bit of caution. I don't think any of the parents that we're watching here, but for some children, for several reasons, they have shut down their visual sense, if you like, because
sometimes it's not from a trauma, it's actually from in the classroom looking up and the teacher saying the answer.
Right, okay, cool, yes, you're right. It could be something not huge trauma. It could be just constantly being told not to do that, not to daydream.
Don't roll your eyes at me.
Yeah, and because a lot of children who with dyslexia are highly imaginative, highly creative, highly visual, and they actually need to go out of the busyness of the classroom to look out of the window or to look at the ceiling, just to calm what's in there or to enjoy what they're seeing. And because what
it's to take away that external stimulus that's around them, in order to be able to actually access the information inside their mind's eye. Because when you're looking at someone, I mean, this is a quite interesting thing, I think, culturally. So I don't know, people are watching. Hello, Marla, my friend over in Malaysia. So I know in some cultures it's very impolite actually to be looking, you know, at someone who's older than you in the eye. So, you know, the culture would dictate that the eyes would actually be down and certainly not eyeballing. Whereas in Western cultures, we have a look to talk rule. If I am talking to you, I expect you to look at me, you know, and if you're not looking at me, then you're not listening. Yeah. There's that, and it's unconscious. Again, it's unconscious. So often teachers or parents are looking, you know, at the child, and if the child's looking away to answer, it looks as if actually they're being impolite, and the reality is, of course, is they've looked up to find the information before they can look. And I find it very difficult, you know, if you're asking me a question and I'm talking and as I said, I've noticed with looking at
I'm all over the place.
just how much my eyes actually do move when I'm talking, and it is it's essential.
Yeah.
It's essential. It's not something that is, and if you stop it, you can actually stop people from accessing the answer, and then it becomes a fear factor that they're afraid of looking up because they've been told up.
That's true. Yeah. So that they have they have shut it down, so that they've stopped themselves looking up. So they've blocked that off. So thank you for that, Sara. Yes, it's not just the sort of severe trauma. Because I remember when parents and children come to see me, sometimes they sit up and look at Paula, you know, and you go, no, it's fine, I'm absolutely fine, you know, because you know, you get the kid who comes in like absolutely sort of crumpled up because they've had so much stuff thrown at them over the years, and there's another woman who's going to try and get them to do other stuff, you know, so it's just, oh, for heaven's sake, just leave me alone. So you have to work with that, and you know, in NLP terms, it's pacing them, isn't it? And gradually sort of building confidence, building rapport, and moving on. So for parents, you know, sometimes for children, it is so hard. And so if they are kind of looking down, then it's just, you know, encouraging them to just say, oh, no, what's up there? Get them out of that, get them into that visual processing.
And as you said right at the beginning, you know, asking them to talk about something that they're really interested in. And that they love, you know, is way easier than, you know, just saying, right, think of a cat. And if they don't particularly like cats or they're not really into animals,
yes,
they're just looking and thinking, well, why am I doing that? Whereas if you say, you know, what colour is your favourite football team's away strip, you know, and you get them to describe that, or one of my favourite ones, and this is with adults too, is, you know, if they're saying, I don't think I visualise, you go, okay, well, which way does your fridge open? You know, just imagine your you know, just show me, you know, and straight away, and obviously there's muscle memory as well, but you're going, well, how did you know that? Like, well, I can see okay, well, what's in the door? What's typically, you know, in the door of the fridge? Or if you go to find your milk or your eggs, you know, where do you typically go? They tend to be kept in the same place, you know, in the fridge. And most people will know the fridge, especially now, because the fridge is...
Oh, yeah, very important, that food. Yes, I used to ask them to describe their lunch boxes if they had packed lunches. So children know their lunch because it's really important part of their pencil case or something. But I think if one tactic I have used, you're saying people who say that they can't see anything. Sometimes I've used a kind of shock tactic, but only to be used in extreme cases, in a moment of need, is to imagine something really horrible. So if you imagine sort of, I sometimes say, you know, what's your worst vegetable? You know, often broccoli comes up and said, okay, now we're going to sit down and eat a big plate of broccoli. You know, just imagine yourself eating, and suddenly the image comes in, or, you know, you're on Celebrity Get Me Out of Here, and in front of you, you know, your supper tonight is a plate of worms, and suddenly the picture will come into their mind.
The boys would love that. The boys always love that kind of thing.
Yes. So have you got any sort of tips for people who can't?
They can't. Generally, it tends to be, you know, I'll just start asking them what are they. So before I'm even obviously asking them about their mental imagery, I am asking them about what are they interested in. And I had one lad who, this is at the pilot school, my kind of, you know, gold standard primary school that has been using this since 2013. And at the end of the year, when we ran the pilot at the beginning, and then they've been using it ever since. I was often asked to go in and help students who were, you know, they were using it in mainstream, they were using it in learning support, and occasionally they would have a student and they would just go, look, we still don't quite know what to do here, because they were only just new at using the processes. And so I went in to talk to him, but he was on the spectrum as well. He did have autism. He does have autism, and he had a learning support teacher, and, you know, she was amazed because he was able to learn his spelling. You know, he'd gone from 0 out of 10 every week to 10 out of 10. But long term, he was finding it hard to remember it.
Yeah.
So two things were happening. And straight away, before I even went, I was like, okay, well, number one, if he's getting 10 out of 10 from 0 out of 10, he's definitely doing more visualization in terms of words and using his mental imagery. But I was wondering if the words that he was using and learning were important enough to him.
Sure.
To remember. And it took me about half an hour to really kind of get in, you know, to talk about things and to really feel because before you can sort of jump to words, you've really got to get the student comfortable with the whole idea of mental imagery. And that hadn't really been set up you know, very well. Anyway, his big thing was Transformers. So the TV series, the games, you know, whatever it was, I have to say my lads were not into Transformers. So this was new territory for me. Normally I have, from my own children, I have a language of a vocabulary that makes sense to the kids. And it was Transformers. And once he started talking about Transformers and how much he loved Transformers, he absolutely lit up.
Yes.
So we ended up having quite a long conversation about, and I was watching his eyes the whole time. His eyes were up the whole time for that. So I suggested to the teacher that actually, instead of learning his spelling list words only, that actually she just temporarily moved to just learning the names of the characters and the planets, and, you know, all these different kind of elements from Transformers. And some of them are 10, 12 letter words. And actually, one of the things that was really interesting with him as well was that when I said to him, you know, okay, so you've learned your words for the week and you've done your spelling test on the Friday, and then and what do you do with them afterwards? And I love this because people just go, well, what do you mean? What did I do? You know, but whereas children just answer you, they don't really think these questions are that strange. And he said, actually, what I do with them is I put them inside a box which has school written on it, and I put a lid on it. So he couldn't remember them long term because he'd made a decision. He only needed them for Friday.
For Friday, yes.
So it worked, but anyway. So then we helped, you know, in terms of memory and opening the box and having it accessible. And once he actually, and then when he was learning the characters, I went back a few weeks later, and he could remember 10, 12 letter, you know, names from the month before. He didn't have to go back and revise it. So for me, it was really, really key to make sure that he was talking about something that he was really interested in and everything else. And most people, again, I have 2 children, and I know they only want to talk about what they're interested in. They never really want to talk about what adults are interested in.
No.
You get them going on their, you know, whereas schoolwork often is very divorced from that, isn't it? It's very removed.
Sadly, yes, the days when we could put the needs and interests of the children first, and that's of course the era that I was trained in. It's absolutely vital. I mean, there is the part of the brain, it's the hippocampus, isn't it, that makes the decision. Do I want to remember this long term? And the brain is making a decision all the time. Am I going to just discard it because we can't remember everything?
Yeah.
So it will say, actually, that's not important. I'm just going to discard that because it's not worth, you know, getting the neural pathways set up for long-term memory for that piece of information. So for it to go into long-term memory, you need to have a decision that is important to remember. And so how do you get that motivation to remember it? And as you say, the Friday spelling test, we were going to talk about that today, and hopefully we will have time. That's the thing. It's oh, well, I'll do it for that. But then the brain goes, oh, I can delete that information now because it's not important to me. I don't need to know how to. Your son was spelling preparatory or something the other day.
Yes, I mean, those words up on the back, so you can. So we use the process when it's a difficult word, because he can spell most words now. I mean, he struggled at the beginning, but we overcame that very quickly with this process. But yeah, we've had some very
odd words that you're not going to see.
With all the words with ORY at the end.
Yeah, and so they just sort of think, well, we've got to find 10 of them, so we'll just bung that in. But the thing is that, you know, for some children, you know, whose brains are working in the kind of, you know, classroom typical way, the sound is there, the image is there, they just look at the word once and it just automatically lodges into long-term memory. You might need to repeat it a few times, but the way that the dyslexic brain is working, that doesn't happen just easily and automatically. There's an effort that has to be put into making it lodge and fix and be stable in long-term memory.
And particularly because the focus with phonics is the auditory part, and we mentioned that the brain scans, the fMRI scans that are done with, you know, comparing fluent readers with those with dyslexia, and what was very clearly shown up on those scans was that the front part of the brain, the Broca's area, the pronunciation was the only part that was really lighting up generally, rather than the visual image, the meaning, you know, the analysis of the word. Those bits were not lighting up. So to just actually then keep focusing on the phonics doesn't make sense. It really doesn't make sense because you're not actually using the three key components together, which actually provide, you know, that network in the brain that then allows for rapid automatic naming, for rapid recognition of words, for being able to just, you know, read it. I mean, it's really interesting because there is this argument that that if you are a fluent reader, you are very, very quickly segmenting and blending. And the reality is that I know I'm not doing that. I know I'm not doing it because I hardly have to look at the word, you know, to know. And also, if you're a fluent reader, you know kind of what's coming next. You don't even have to read all of the words to, you know, I'm a speed reader. I teach that as well. And when I learned how to speed read, it was incredible because all I was looking for was the keywords. So to be able to do that, to segment them, unless it's a word I've never seen before. So it's not segmenting and blending is useless. Absolutely not. It's a word, it's one word attack skill. It's one way, isn't it, of approaching how to read.
It's essential. You know, you need to be able to know the sounds of the language in order to decode a word that we don't know. We've got time, haven't we? Should we go into a little bit about why mental imagery skills are so important in spelling and how they're really not being explicitly taught? And this is the root of many problems that people are having with their spelling. So should we just think, so anybody who's out there at the moment, just we're going to have a think about how you know how to spell words. Yeah. So I mean, if we say a really easy word like fish, for example, what happens inside your mind when you, so if I asked you to write down fish, you can just do it in the air or just, you know, practice it. What is happening for you? Just take a moment. Are you seeing it in your mind's eye? Are you seeing an image of the fish? Are you seeing the letters? Maybe you're not aware of seeing anything at all because you just know it. It's so familiar.
Well, it was funny because, you know, it's very hard to not do the exercise, even though I know what you're doing. It's very hard to not do it. And I know for me, what happened was almost, I didn't have to move my eyes. I could see the word, but inside my brain. Yeah. So I didn't have to try and drag it out. It wasn't a difficult word because I know it and it's very familiar. So yeah, immediately I could get a sense of, yeah, I know what it is. I could see it, but I didn't have to really stretch to see it. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, a more familiar word like thoroughly. Yeah, a bit more effort there.
Yeah. Okay.
I find it difficult to see it. I'm not particularly visual myself. I find it I can see the TH and then it kind of goes at the end. So I would actually have to start writing it.
Well, thoroughly is a hilarious word, I think, because if you think about kind of building up the length of words, so if you use the OUGH with and then with the T. So if it's a T, it's tough. If it was a TH, so it's tough, and then it's a TH, it's though. Then if it's a THR, it's through.
Yeah.
And then it's thorough. So those OUGH. So that really is absolutely, it's so important to understand the difference between words that can follow a strict set of rules, which phonics implies that there are rules, and if you have these letters together, these are the sounds they make. And then actually look at the English language and look at how completely and utterly insane it is.
Well, people would argue that it isn't insane. There are the people who are really saying actually you can go back to etymology, you can go back to Greek and Latin and French, and you can find rules for it. Well, you know, if you're 5 years old and you're struggling to spell fish, you know, it's really, I would suggest not the best way. But so thoroughly, I would have to actually sort of start writing it, and then it happens, because for me it's a combination of the sound and the actual physical thing of writing it that helps for me, because I'm not particularly visual. But what about a word that, I know some people might know it, some people might not, syzygy?
And it's a real word.
And it is a real word. It's a configuration of celestial bodies in alignment, three, like sun, moon and earth.
It's like an eclipse. When you have an eclipse, you've got the alignment of planets.
Yeah. How would you do that? So just think in your mind's eye or in your body, how does it feel? Do you begin to feel any panic? Oh my God, I don't know how to do that. Okay. And do you know if you've got it right? No, you don't.
Not
just by looking at it and saying it, you don't know whether you've written it. The only way you would know whether you've written it correctly is by seeing it. And actually it is spelled, I'll put you into misery, S-Y-Z-Y-G-Y.
I know, no vowels. There are no vowels in that word.
So you could have spelt it with an I or ER for Sizurgi, or could, you know, at the end you could have all sorts of things instead of the Y at the end. And what about this one? Bawbee. It's a Scottish coin.
Don't give the meaning.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I've just given it. It's too late.
Because when I do this, I always say, you know,
sorry.
It's because sometimes when you give the meaning, people can then kind of, oh, well, if it means that, then it's kind of similar to this, or it's kind of.
Okay, yeah, good point.
So actually, it's quite interesting because if you think about doing a spelling test in class, or now they're not in class, but you're doing a spelling test as a parent with your child, and the word doesn't make any sense to the child. Just because it's Friday, this is Fridays, this is this week's list, it's on the list, they have to know it. They don't understand what it means. They don't know what context to use it in. They can't use it in a sentence. If they hear it, it doesn't in a sentence. The whole sentence then stops making sense to them because they don't have that grasp over the meaning of the word. And it's like me teaching you how to spell, you know, to show you a word in Arabic and just go, that's the word, and I'll tell you what it is. But I'm not going to tell you what it means. There's nothing for the brain to hook it onto.
Sure.
There's nowhere for it to be stored. So often when I do the little kind of crazy spellings,
quite right,
I won't give the meaning because it's like, whoa, I've never heard this word before, don't know what it means.
Yes, quite right.
And as adults, when that happens, we can feel quite kind of panicky as well, and a little bit, oh my god, it's just this emptiness, you know, in terms of
that's true. You've got nothing to hook it onto, have you? So I think I'm just too kind.
You are too kind, Paula.
Too helpful.
I'm not.
Make them suffer.
Well, anyway, make them work at it, because we're expecting children to be able to spell words that they've maybe never seen before, or they've seen it before but they haven't understood it, so that they're missing key elements of language. You know, words at the end of the day are about communication. They're about meaning. It's about, you know, it's a way of communicating. And you know, we're not big advocates of non-words, you know, that are used in phonics because of this difference in pronunciation depending on the other letters, depending on the context. You know, English is tough enough without introducing words that don't mean anything.
Nonsense words. So back to Bawbee. I've probably forgotten what it means by now anyway. So, so Bawbee. And if you think about Bawbee, well, there are not upteen, but there's several ways that you could think about spelling it. You know, the or sound could be or, could be one of the OUG, like in bought, if you really wanted to go that way. You know, it could be AW as in saw. And then at the end, the E, it could be IE at the end, it could be Y at the end, it could be double E at the end, it could, well, probably not, be EA at the end. That doesn't often appear at the end of a word, but I mean, that is the sound. For a child, they wouldn't necessarily know that one. So there are very different possibilities there. The only way you could know how to spell that word is by seeing it. And the only way you could remember that word is by having the mental image of it there. So that's why it's absolutely important. I mean, in English too, the whole
spell it, because people are all sitting here going,
oh, sorry. I'm being wicked now and unkind. So yes, it's actually BAWBEE. So that's the old Scottish coin. It's absolutely vital that they have that ability to see the words. And coming on to, you know, looking at your words that are up there on the board, just to give parents, we've got the last 10 minutes if there are no questions, just helping parents with the spelling tests, you know, learning the spellings at home. Obviously, hopefully you'll have done our course and you'll be able to teach them the initial stages of how to see words in their mind's eye, and how to see words that are not necessarily concrete nouns, but words like once or again or frequently, because we can't make an image for those. But there's in the course we go through how you're going to learn that.
And we don't start with those words because they don't have.
We don't start with those words, yes. But obviously those sight words like aisle, wheel, heel, they'll, you know, was, all those sorts of words. So what we suggest is that with the spelling test, you can see Sarah's got hers on post-its up there. Often schools will produce a list of words, won't they? And they're usually tiny because they're saving on the budget for the photocopying, I guess. And they're all in a big list. Is often look, cover, write, check. And the problem with that is I've seen children just automatically looking at it. Yeah, okay, I've got it. And then they just write it in, they fill in the boxes.
They're not transferring it to them.
They're not transferring. It's all in short-term memory. If you're lucky, it's in nanosecond memory, and it isn't being transferred into long-term memory. And the only way you can do that is through using the meaning. Yeah. So put it into a sentence, get the context, make sure that. So I mean, by getting the sound, yes, you can look at the letters, you can look at the phonics, you can look at the sounds in the word. Most importantly of all, you're going to look at the visual image of it, and to do that of the whole word. And to do that, really, all those words, each word needs to be on a separate post-it, as you've done it.
Yeah.
Because it's just too confusing, you know, to see a whole list of 10 words, all those letters jumbling up, and often, you know, they're going to be swimming around all over the place. Some are going to go disappearing, and so on. First thing to do is to get them all written on a separate post-it, and then you can start to work.
And as we talked about right at the beginning, we were talking about eye patterns. So this is the tissue. It's not a word on a post-it, but it's to hold. It's to actually get the child to look. You know, you have to identify which is the predominant way that they look for remembering things. Is it to the left or to the right? So for me, it's up to my left, and to be able to hold that in a position that they can see it. They look up. So they're going straight into their visual memory. You know, by doing that. And then when you move it, they're looking back up again, you know, to see it. And it's really, really important that all of those bits of the puzzle, you know, have to be in place. And then eventually, you know, like me with the word fish, I'm not looking up. I know what it is. You know, it's I don't have to. The more difficult it is to remember something, the more likely we are to actually move our eyes up. So at the beginning, you encourage it just to develop that. And for some students, the minute they just are allowed to look up and they're encouraged to look up and they know that's where they need to go, it can be like a key. It can be like a key that actually unlocks so many.
It can be pretty instant, yeah. So somebody who's a very great visualizer, but they've just never used that skill for words because nobody's told them that that's the skill you need for words. Go, oh, you mean you just want me to take I often use to take a photo of it. You know, so take a photo and, you know, we're going to stick it, you know.
And then you check the quality of that, or the letters.
Are they still, are they stable?
Just that one word, nothing else. So that's the key thing. So a lot of people kind of might go take a photo and they think that's all they need to do, you know, but actually you need to check the quality of the mental imagery of that photograph, not just take a photo. And that for us is absolutely the magic, you know, of this process is understanding what's happening individually for that child. As opposed to this is just, you're going to just teach a process. It's coaching them to use their mental imagery as opposed to just telling them what to do.
Every single step of the way, because everybody's different. So you might be looking at the word fish, and then the letters might be sort of sloping away, or very common is that the letters in the middle just seem to disappear. You can do the first one on the end, but the longer words in the middle. So it's checking all the way. What exactly are you seeing? What exactly are you seeing? So there's nothing wrong with look, cover, write, check. It's just that we're not teaching them how to look at a word. So you need to really look at the word. You can break it down into syllables, but how are you looking and how are you transferring that image into the mind's eye? So the look is taking some time. And I know for some parents, because it's just sounding out, they will just say, this is the list of 10 words. Call it out and just have a go. Use sounding out. You cannot use sounding out.
I always tell the story of Harry Potter. I love Harry Potter, love the books, and all the way through, they're all 7 books, I was pronouncing it Hermione. Until the movies came out, I'd never heard the name Hermione before, and I was like, Hermione? But who is it? You know, if someone had said Hermione and I then had to try and write it, I would not have spelt it the way Hermione is spelled. And Lucy's joining. Hi, Lucy. Wonderful to see you again.
Hi, Lucy.
And she has a really good point, which is so in Jolly Phonics, you have the words that follow the rules, the phonics rules, and then you have the words that don't follow them. And in Jolly Phonics, they're called tricky words.
Yes.
And language is extremely important because of what it implies and what it communicates. And yeah, exactly, Lucy, if we can stop using this term tricky word, because something's only, you know, I love Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, you know, the TV show. And as they say, it's easy when you know it.
Yes.
You know, nothing's tricky if you know it.
If you know, exactly.
And this idea of tricky words, you know, implies that it's incredibly difficult to learn these words. It is if you're applying the phonics rules, because they don't comply with those rules.
Exactly.
But it's very easy. It becomes so much easier if we then use the visualization. And just as a last point, because we've only got 2 or 3 minutes left, you know, one of the things we wanted to talk about as well was homophones, words that are spelt differently, but sound the same and have different meanings. And again, if we only rely on the auditory aspect of the word, it's incredibly difficult for students to know which version to use. I remember when I did my research, my master's research, and I did this process with adults who had difficulty with spelling. One of my students, he couldn't believe, because he'd said actually what he realized was he could spell, he just never knew which version.
Right.
He said, well, so bored and bored. He says, I know the 2 different spellings, but I don't know which version to use. I don't know which is the right one for that meaning and for that context. And once I taught in the visualization process, and you have the picture and everything else connected to that, if you can, he just got it. It was again like a little key that just unlocked all of this knowledge. And as Lucy said, some words we don't know yet.
Exactly. Yeah, we don't know them yet.
So we've covered quite a lot, and
we have, yes,
jumped around a little bit. But again, you know, what we really want to stress, you know, with these talks, and if people, you know, we didn't really have any specific questions about the process, but is that the course is free for parents, the online course. There's a link above this video, and people can click on it. We're not going to bombard you with emails after emails, you know, at the end of this. A lot of people get worried when they fill in things. You'll get an email with your login, that's it, and some little bit of information. And really, we just can just love as many parents to have this as possible who are working with their children, and their children are struggling with their spelling, their reading, because the mental imagery also helps with handwriting skills, you know, as well. So if they're struggling with all of them or only one of them, this course, you know, can really help.
Exactly. And it goes into dyslexia in more detail, doesn't it? The neuroscience behind it, and checklists.
And we do a checklist as well for parents.
So you learn a lot about it. I mean, we're not saying that every child who has difficulty with their spelling is dyslexic.
Nope. And
it's very difficult to discover that, you know, sort of in the early years, you know, sort of when they're 4, 5, 6 years old even. So we're not saying that every child who's struggling has got dyslexia at all. But it's just to help you understand the challenges that your child might face if they're struggling with learning with phonics.
And we have a checklist that if you're not sure, you know, these are the typical signs. Again, you know, we're not educational psychologists, we're not assessors, you know, parents are not, and of course it's very difficult to get access to people like that at the moment as well, in terms of getting your child tested. So in the meantime, this is a very simple, and you might just discover some amazing things about your child's mental imagery as well that you didn't know, because most of the times it's actually off the charts. It's just really interesting, really incredible. So we do encourage you to go out there, you know, click on this, give it a go, and we'd love to hear back from people. You know, we've seen so many people sign up, and we just want to know how are you getting on. Let us know anything we can help you with. You know, we're here to help you.
Definitely.
Paula, thank you as always.
Thank you, Sara. Great to catch up. Great to have a chat about our passion.
I know. We'll be back next Wednesday at 9 o'clock.
Absolutely.
That's British Standard Time. So we'll see some more people on the call then.
Lovely.